Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, and I think the first international podcast episode, should we call this? The International Adventures episode 1, I think. I'm about 2 minutes from Asia. I'm definitely in Europe. I'm about 2 minutes from Asia. Archie's still in Europe, but not home, and Ellie's in Australia to discuss a series in North America, which didn't even race in their home country, they raced in Canada. A true international. Only if like Sao Paulo still exists on the calendar, or IndyCar went to South Africa for absolutely no reason, we'd have the true international episode. But not only are we all international, we've obviously got a race to discuss, which are quite a bit. It had yet another victory drought ended. We had major talking points of the collision. We had Teo Pourchaire's story, about 4 and 5 combined for this episode. So probably deserves its own episode again for the whole situation. But there's obviously plenty to discuss for this one, and we'll obviously go through as normal, despite the slightly different setups for this week.
I was going to say, for those watching on YouTube, I mean, my sound might be echoey because this is a very echoey place, but I'm in Mallorca, and yeah, it's a very different setup. I'm currently sat in a kitchen, which I've definitely not recorded a podcast from a kitchen before.
No, I'm at a kitchen table, if that counts, with some various different DVDs and books behind me. So I don't know. Welcome to my Istanbul Airbnb, ladies and gentlemen. You've caught us at an interesting time. I won't show the rest of my room because it's my stuff cluttered everywhere because I'm leaving tomorrow. But it's familiar territory for me next week, whatever's coming.
Yeah, and I mean, my experience watching the race as well, it was kind of just somehow managed to get it on my phone. I think it was one of the first times I've actually just watched a race on my phone.
Toronto every year up in different countries.
Yeah, so I was away last year.
I started watching IndyCar 2021. 2022 I was in the Netherlands, and I think I watched it on a German stream. Last year I was in Australia. I think I watched it on an Argentine stream or something, and now I'm ended up in Istanbul. And I watched it in English stream. There wasn't the correct way of watching it, put it that way. But
last year I was in Portugal, but the place we were staying had Sky Sports, which was a big plus. Let's put it that way.
And a race to discuss in a weekend, one of the most dominant in IndyCar history, at least most recent IndyCar history. The first time in recorded history, I think, a driver topped all practice sessions, qualifying and the race, and they led every single lap pretty much, apart from the ones that were in the pits. That was Colton Herta, who broke his 40 race long win streak. We had been saying for quite a while that a win is overdue, a win is coming, and it finally has come, and Herta's done in the most dominant fashion. I said mid-season that Herta would win this race. I said in predictions later that he'd win this race. I said it in my preview that he'd win this race. I was confident, and he made absolutely no mistake. And he's potentially back in a championship picture, but I think more importantly for him, he's got that sort of win drought over with.
It was dominance that we haven't really seen that often, to be honest. I mean, I must say, Herta was keen to point out the fact that he did not top every session in qualifying, so he doesn't see it as a complete and utter whitewash. I think leading 81 laps out of 85, and yeah, I mean, I think Graham Rahal on Friday described Herta as lights out, and I think it was Friday really put a couple of tents on the field in each of the practice segments, because we had that street course split practice format. And from there, it was just, that was kind of the precedent set. Top second practice, kind of never looked in doubt when it really mattered in qualifying. He put that lap on, and obviously it was kind of Andretti Global just completely obliterating the field in many ways, because Kyle Kirkwood in the sister car obviously locked out the front row, and then it was just those two guys that were kind of working in tandem during the race. And again, I think it's that same phrase, never really looked in doubt. And Herta was very interesting, kind of speaking afterwards, that there wasn't really doubt in his mind that this would come, because some drivers say when they've not won and it suddenly goes from months to years, that it can start to build and it can start to weigh, and the pressure can get quite a lot. But I think he knew that he was in the position. Like, I mean, he's got 14 poles now. Will Power's record on, he's the leader, let's say, on 70. Will Power hadn't even made his IndyCar debut at the age that Herta is. Power was 25. Herta's only 24. So it's just been a matter of not really converting those poles recently. Obviously, this season he had Detroit, he had Iowa. Obviously, Detroit, yes, he made the error later in the race, but it kind of spiraled a bit after the wet weather. They made the wrong choice for tires. Iowa, obviously, just a poorly timed caution. So this is a matter of time. This is kind of the best I think we've seen from Herta in an awfully long time. He's now up to fourth in the championship. He's 4 points off Dixon in third. Again, it just didn't look in doubt. He controlled the race. There were cautions. There were red flag restarts, but I think Kirkwood cooperated. He played the team game really nicely. He was very happy for Colton afterwards. He celebrated. Both of them celebrated really well. Colton with his donuts, burnouts, no hand donuts, which was quite impressive. But it was a stellar performance. It really was about as good as it gets. And I don't think that will be beaten this season in terms of a weekend as a whole.
Yeah, I think we've talked about before how Herta can kind of get the poles, but he can't necessarily convert it in a race. And I think this was just a perfect example of him kind of converting it throughout the entire weekend. Like I said, it was a dominant kind of race and a dominant weekend. And I think he just needs kind of a result like this and more results like this in the future, just to kind of get that confidence up. And then I think he's got it now, and I think he can kind of carry that on throughout the rest of the season and probably next season.
Felt a bit Pillow-esque, didn't it?
It did. It really did. And that's what we've been dying to see from Herta. I think that sort of level-headedness, consistency, execution across an entire weekend, whether, we've seen team errors, we've seen errors from him, we've seen a lot of misfortune, but all of that has kind of combined to deny him those wins recently.
But yeah, we've seen several times it's Herta, he gets under the slices of pressure in a good situation, and we've seen him bin it. We've seen him throw away a good result, and that never really looked like happening, which I think was quite a bold statement because, with Herta, you previously never quite knew what he did. Even in the 500, you were like, oh, and then he blew it away. So
I think it helped, I would just say, having Kirkwood behind him, because if it wasn't a teammate, he may have attacked a bit more. Kirkwood said there were no team orders as such, but he also felt he had the pace to maybe pass Herta and sail off into the distance, the caveat of Herta kind of managing the race. So, yeah, he was fortunate to have a teammate behind him, but he managed the restart so well. He got through. It seemed like the gods were trying to throw bad luck at him through these restarts, but he didn't succumb.
There's a big result for Kirkwood as well. It's his first podium of the season. His stupid record of his only podiums being wins can also now be eradicated. His only wins are now wins. That's the new line for Kirkwood. But in all seriousness, it's a good result for him. He's been sort of on that borderline all year, particularly consistent, but not quite had the result. So obviously this feels like quite a rewarding result, quite a deserved result. A good weekend all round for Andretti. I know Ericsson did have a great weekend, which has unfortunately become a bit too common, but there's definitely been a marked improvement. I can't remember the last time Andretti just sort of had a smooth weekend all round, and it feels like a big result for the team. I can't remember the last time I had one too. It's been quite a while ago. Let me fact check that whilst someone else speaks.
Yeah, I'll speak to Ericsson while you look at that, Dan. I think unfortunately for him, it was successive weekends of his weekend kind of being derailed at the first hurdle. It was inside the opening 5 laps of practice in Iowa that he had that crash, and inside I think three laps or something, he said inside of Toronto, he had an engine go pop. So that puts you on the back foot. You don't get to run the alternates ahead of qualifying, and he did well to get into the Fast 12, that considered. Once he was in the Fast 12, I think he must have had an issue because he was quite far down. And it wasn't really until the race that it seemed as though he was starting to come into his own, and then he had an incident with Felix Rosenqvist in kind of the Andretti sister partnership with Meyershank Racing. It looked like he faded a little bit. I think there was just a bit of a misjudgment. Ericsson was on cold tyres. Felix was coming in hot, quite a big closing speed. That kind of scuppered good days for both. I think, while I've mentioned his name, I may as well get on to what Felix Rosenqvist's day was, because he's just had some horrible luck. He started the season with 4 top 10 finishes, and since he's only got 1, that was, he's got none in the last 6 races, because, you just have to look at Iowa, where he had the bizarre sort of suspension-looking failure, and here he had this coming together with Ericsson, and then after that, when he probably could have salvaged a top 10 possibly, he had sort of I think it was a hybrid issue that put him into pit lane. So that was a shame. He qualified third, so essentially it was a top 3 or Andretti, or 5 of the Andretti sort of run cars were in the fast 12. Lucas qualified 6th, dropped down a bit in the race but finished 6th, which is another real statement from him. That was, again, showing of the Andretti pace, but also showing of really the job that he's done. And finally, it was a result that he'd long wanted. But before I forget, actually, we'll play in what Colton Herta said after his win. In the post-race press conference, we asked him about his donuts. He was very pleased that he had the opportunity there, and also kind of just the mindset after such a long period without a victory. Thanks, Dave. Congrats, Colton. First of all, I mean, it seemed like quite a release on the way back into the pits with some quite impressive donuts. Can you please just describe that celebration and just the release of emotion that you felt after taking the checkered flag?
I love doing donuts. And this engine's like getting ripped out after this race, so I could destroy it as much as I want. Although Honda won't like that because they like to rebuild them and keep them in cycle, but that one might be destroyed. So apologies for that. But I hate when I don't get to do donuts. And this was kind of like the perfect race to win because this engine's, like I said, coming out. So I got to do them.
Good stuff. And can you just please explain what happens to your mindset after a period so extended, I guess, without a victory? Does that become a burden, and how can you kind of avoid that frustration getting the better of you?
No, I mean, it's not frustration. It's just eagerness almost. For me, it was, hunger. I never got down about it, but, there were times maybe of frustration where places I thought I could win and it didn't happen. Yes. But I think over the season, I think you just get hungrier for it and you want it more. It does make you work harder, and I think that's a good thing. But I'd prefer it if we just won a lot more.
Just in case you were wondering, Andretti did actually have a 1-2 last year, which isn't very good on me. Kirkwood and Grosjean on Long Beach.
Yeah.
I forgot that happened. That happened. It was that weird part of the season, and Grosjean suddenly was really good.
I've got to be honest, I didn't remember that either, so don't feel too bad.
Before that, was mid or higher 2020. So
it kind of, again, that kind of just emphasizes their strength on street courses. And last year they just weren't executing. And I think it was mentioned it was Friday or Saturday that the downsizing may have helped. They weren't stretched thin previously, but they were, it feels definitely less pressure on each individual in the team now. So that's something I think the MSR relationship has grown a little bit this year to kind of compensate for that entry disappearing from the Andretti stable. It was. I think Santino Ferrucci mentioned on Friday something to do with moon dampers. Andretti have something that he refers to, or has heard being referred to, as moon dampers. The drivers were very sort of, when asked about, why are you so good on street courses? Just the package is good. It's the usual. Yeah, the dampers must be good. It's just kind of a bit of everything. But moon dampers, that's a key word.
Whatever it means.
Whatever it is.
It's been a 40-race winning wait for Colton Herta, but I'll tell you what hasn't been a wait. To order his merch on the Formula Model Shop website, what are you all waiting for? It's right there available to buy now. And here you are wasting our time listening to our podcast. I'm just joking. Listen to the end and then head over to the Formula Model Shop website, the best place to get your IndyCar merchandise in the UK. And if you're in Turkey or Spain, you can get your IndyCar merchandise from Formula Model Shop there too. You
can use the discount code 5BOMB, all one word, FIVEBOMB, to get 5% off products on the FMS site. Visit the Instagram highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram account for a link to an exclusive VIP section, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
And once you've read all the articles, you can find a pink banner on the DIVEBOMB website, which takes you over to Formula Model Shop, or you can just type in formulamodelshop.co.uk.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content.
So we'll talk about Ferrucci because he was probably the next biggest talking point in the race, because for the second week in a row, we had a Voigt car flipped upside down in quite dramatic fashion. We'll talk about Pato O'Ward because he got impeded in qualifying. I mean, he did get impeded in qualifying, so no beating around the bush. But we'll get onto it later. But Play obviously got a penalty for it, which is a bit controversial, but it's not what we're talking about, so we'll get onto it later. But I felt O'Ward has actually quietly been in quite good form since the Indy 500. He was on for a top 10 in every race, or top 8 in every race since the Indy 500. I thought he was in quite a good run of form. And in the race, I thought he'd have managed it really well. He got the strategy right by going onto the greens early. And he was running 6th. And, I was pretty sure McLaughlin's tyres were going to absolutely collapse because he had to run like 35 laps in the alternate. So there was a decent chance that O'Ward could have ended up in the top 5. And a bit of a bizarre spin. He just, he was ahead of Palou as well, which is quite big for him. And he just completely lost it on his own into turn 1. It was an odd accident. It's probably one of those we got in the marbles. But before we get onto the crash, the actual incident itself, like when you look at a championship contender, that is something which is probably thrown a championship away in some cases for Pato O'Ward. So it's a bit of a shame, but it's just a costly error making a really basic error like that, obviously, which transcended quite a big accident. Ericsson sort of mildly hit him trying to avoid him. There was quite a scary moment where you've got Fittipaldi flying over O'Ward, then you've got Ferrucci quite literally flying over him into the catch fencing, and then Siegel catching him a bit more hard on, which sends both them absolutely careering into the wall at high speed. So it's a scary accident. The most important thing is everyone's walked away from it fine. But yeah, it's just an odd sighting for Foyt to have another flipped car in consecutive weeks.
You couldn't write it, could you? I mean, it was, one thing I will say, it was extremely fortunate that Ferrucci didn't end up in the catch fence, because we've seen some very nasty accidents where that's happened. And I mean, to be honest, it's fortunate he didn't end up right on top of Fittipaldi after his own launch. It was a bizarre sight. It was, obviously Ericsson kind of just, he just couldn't avoid it. There's nothing, it was a blind corner. And I think that's part of the issue, that spotters can't see that corner. And, there's been a lot of debate about, the yellow should have been thrown earlier, but these are split-second things we're talking about. And even if the yellow was thrown, say after Ericsson had hit O'Ward, which would have been a reasonable time, but even if they hadn't thrown it then, it's still, again, only just happened. But I don't think, I couldn't see Fittipaldi or Ferrucci really avoiding that, to be honest, regardless of yellow flags. And it's so hard. And we give so much credit to race control, deservedly so, because on ovals, you won't even have cut to a car spinning and there's already a caution being thrown. So I'm keen not to get too sort of critical for that. But the actual incident itself, I mean, it provided some spectacular onboards. And there was actually a shot from a camera that was obviously attached to the fence where you essentially got Fittipaldi having just finished his own kind of vault into the air, and Ferrucci's essentially heading towards his rear wing upside down. It's just the most astonishing thing. But once again, I think just safety, so much credit to the safety, the aero screen, the roll hoop. There was a bit of damage, but both stayed intact, relatively speaking, as was the case with Rob's at Iowa. So, I mean, O'Ward had a lot of hits. I think it's huge championship implications. He probably saw. Team has a massive damage bill because he got hit. I mean, he had the wall impact. Ericsson hit him. Fittipaldi, Ferrucci, then Siegel was probably the biggest hit. He was coming at speed and then kind of just abruptly came to a halt. So that's 2 wrecked cars for Aaron McLaren.
On O'Ward's side, over the first 2 hits obviously weren't good, but the Siegel one was in particular quite bad. It was with some force. Obviously, that was red flag to do the cleanup. And look, I see McLaren's argument. I think it took 5 or 6 seconds from when O'Ward first hit the wall to the caution being called out. In some minds, with the new restart system, if no one hits O'Ward, is that one of the ones where you can get him restarted? IndyCar obviously don't want to, with the Lundqvist Pourchaire incident, that previously would have definitely been a caution, but they wait a little bit and it's not a caution because you can restart. It is O'Ward one of those cases where if nobody hits him, he can restart. Then you've got to make the judgment, what's an incident where he can be hit and he can't be hit? And then you've got, 6 seconds is supposedly too long, and Ericsson's already committed to that corner. Even if a caution comes on, there's no chance he's making it. And you even think with Fittipaldi Ferrucci, it's still a bit steep in a 4-second window for them to slow down, change their braking point, change their turning point to avoid the accident. Yes, it might be slower speeds, but I think race control are getting a bit of flack for something which I don't think they've done hideously wrong. Like, it's more consequence than offence, I think.
Yeah, and I think consequence of the circuit as it kind of is, like, it's just that's how, I mean, you can't really mitigate it, can you? It's just how street courses are. You're not going to be able to see every corner, and that sort of blind corner. I don't know, do you think of changing the layout? Because we do see a lot of incidents like that there. I mean, look at the start last year, we had a pilot. Start this year, Christian Rasmussen was in the wall. So it's a sketchy corner. I think that's one thing to say.
But it goes very wide down the main straight, doesn't it? You've got 4 or 5 wide, especially at starts. I think that's why I have so many accidents, because you're just condensing the lanes from like 6 to 3, which causes space that cars can't go into. And obviously, you just had a caution at the start involving Ferrucci, Rasmussen, and Ericsson, forced Rasmussen out straight away.
While we are on this crash, I think it's probably a good time to bring up Stingray Rob, because when we left you last week, I don't believe he was actually cleared. I think there were quite a lot of doubts whether he would kind of run in Toronto, but Tuesday there was a media call with Rob, and ultimately he kind of said that his biggest injury was a tiny little blister on his finger from a burn when he touched the titanium of the aero screen, basically, after it had skidded across the ground for however long. Yeah, that was the biggest wound he had. He said he did pass out after the crash, but that was more just like when you get out of bed too quickly in the morning. He just got up very quickly, obviously, after what he confirmed was a 109G impact, which is preposterous, quite frankly. But we got the opportunity to speak to Rob actually on Tuesday. So yeah, I'll just play that in. I think one important thing is the credit he gives to the AMR safety crew. Having rewatched the crash, he basically skids past an entrance point, and as soon as his car is out of the camera shot, there is a vehicle pulling onto the track. He has a person underneath the aero screen checking he's okay immediately after his car comes to a halt. So yeah, here's a bit from Rob on kind of that situation and his season to date, including the Indy 500. Glad you're okay, Stingray. Couple on the accident first of all. Can you just talk us through the feeling when you are sort of in the air? I know you kind of said it felt all right at that point, but does time slow? Does time go quickly? How does that feel at that point?
I had hit the back of the car, and then as I was up in the air, I could see the top of the catch fence kind of almost at my level. And at that moment, I realized that I was in some trouble there. And I still had my hands on the steering wheel at that point, just bracing myself. And I had enough time in the air where it kind of went slow motion. I let go, grabbed onto my harnesses to hold on so I wasn't like getting hurt by the wheel flying around or anything. And on the way down, I had time to think about, accidents that I've seen in recent history of guys where they've gone flying through the air like that. Think about Hinchcliffe, think about Dixon at the Speedway, just the impact of those. And even like Simon Pagenaud last year. I mean, we got to see his wreck, and I think it was around 112 Gs was that impact. Now I was at 109 Gs. And so the fact of the matter is that I should be more hurt than I am. And I don't know why I'm okay as I am. I'm very thankful, and I'm giving the glory to God for that, and thanking the crew that was there to pick me up out of the car, because everything did its job. Everyone did their job as they were supposed to. And when I came down and felt that impact and it knocked the wind out of me, I didn't feel any of that piercing through my legs or any sort of damage there. It was just like a couple light bruises of the bulkhead hit my knees, and kind of the skidding on the ground. I was like very, very surprised that I was as okay as I was.
And then obviously huge credit to the safety of the cars, but also the AMR safety crew. Can you just kind of give a word for how they dealt with it when you were kind of aware of their presence, when they tipped the car over, getting you out, tending to you? Can you just give a word for them as well?
Yeah, I mean, they did everything and beyond what they could have done. When I was getting to a stop, my spotter was on the radio and he said, "You're almost stopped. You're almost stopped. All right, they're there." And it was literally like, as soon as I came to a rest, there was someone ducking under the halo to say, "Hey, dude, are you good? Like, what's hurting? Can you breathe?" And I'm going to be honest, the adrenaline was going at that point, so I probably didn't handle that situation as good as I'd like to. I was a little upset. I was like, of course I'm hurt. Like, did you just see what happened to me? And like, can you breathe? Yes, I can breathe, but it's not very good. I'm hanging upside down in an Indy car. So when they flipped me back over, and I had I don't know how many guys around there. I think there was 10 plus members of the crew just standing around supporting me. Like when I passed out, I could feel two guys holding onto my arms, two guys behind me, people holding my legs. I mean, they were fully in support of me, and I was fully reliant on them in that moment. And they did everything they could to make me safe, and it shows.
And on to more positive things. Can you just expand a little bit on the momentum you spoke about going into the Iowa weekend, the performance obviously in the first race, and maybe just touch on a bit about how the year you feel has gone so far and the progress that you've made through this sophomore season?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Mid-Ohio was a decent race for us. We didn't qualify as well as we'd like. We had an issue there. But going into the race, we finished 16th, and that was because of the team strategy, and we just had really good in and out laps and decent race pace. So that was really good to see moving forward in the field that way. And then first race at Iowa, finished 15th. Could have finished higher had I done my job better on restarts, but the nature of the track just made it really difficult. And the fact of the matter is that we're building this momentum. We're building a program a lot from a new team with a lot of new engineers, a lot of new mechanics. And so it's taken time to get to this point, but that momentum is being felt and we're getting better every weekend. So race 2 was honestly a decent recovery. Running P19 with only half tank of fuel in the car at the middle stint was pretty impressive. And the fact that we were able to get those laps back when we did and move forward was really good. And so I think going into Toronto, we're heads up. We're really excited about it just because I want to get in the car as soon as possible, but it's also a track that some of our team members have done well at in the past, and the knowledge that they're bringing is going to help us a lot. So I'm excited, and as well as my teammate, he's 10th in the championship right now, so I've been cheering for him to keep moving forward and hopefully drag me along with him to some success here soon.
And then to close from my side, just to backtrack a month or so to the Indy 500, you were off strategy, but you led more than a few laps there. So can you just talk us through that experience and maybe how it compared to your first year at the 500 as well?
Yeah, third most laps led was a lot better than only 92 laps completed. So I was very happy this year. I think that's kind of been the highlight of my career is leading laps at the 500. And I remember that first pit cycle when everyone dove the pit lane and the only car left on track in front of me was the pace car. I was a little worried because I realized what that was going to do to us, but kind of then the strategies merged together as the race went on. I got to see like, okay, we're actually in the fight. If it wasn't for that lap, I think it was like 148 yellow. We were going to be right there in the mix just because that was the game, right? Like the race chooses the winners, and that weekend it chose Joseph as the winner. But I think that we were, that close to having a shot at it. So that was really cool to see. That was a lot of fun, and definitely one of the things I'll hold on to forever.
For the second time in, I don't know, 3 or 4 weekend, we've had a Penske collision between McLaughlin and Power. I mean, the whole race fell apart in literally one corner where McLaughlin made a pretty dumb move on Power in Laguna Seca. This was the opposite, where Power just made a stupid move in McLaughlin here, sent him into the wall. Newgarden got a puncture somewhere. I can't remember who was it from. Was it Malukas running into him?
Situation, I don't know. I can't remember.
Someone anyway.
I can't remember exactly what happened in what sort of moment. I don't know whether that wasn't running over debris. I mean, if it was, then that's disaster.
Newgarden got a puncture in the same corner, and Power obviously gets a drive-through because he just absolutely punted McLaughlin out for no reason. McLaughlin's response, I thought, was absolutely gold, waiting for Power to come round and then applauding him as he went back round. He posted loads of memes on Twitter about it. If you haven't checked them out, there's about 5 or 6. They're absolutely brilliant. I think my favourite one's about that random person, seat 22C, when the pilot lands or something.
Hey, if there's any incentive to stick around to the end, our funny moments section this week has quite a few candidates. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I think McLaughlin's response was absolutely god. It was absolutely hilarious, especially with being a teammate. Anyway, bit of a stupid incident, and I mean Newgarden. It was going so well, wasn't it? He was running in like I think 3rd or 4th, and it was looking so soon. It was like we finally got a good weekend for Newgarden. Like finally, it's been so long since he had a nice smooth weekend, and then has a botched pit stop. Bit of a disaster, not the end of the world. He goes down to 8th. then he had that puncture, so he had to pit. And then he went off. I can't remember which one it might have been. I think it was Grosjean. I might be wrong. Correct us if we're wrong. But then he goes off trying to overtake someone. And the funny thing is, he actually ends up 11th, which I think is actually on paper one of his better results this year. It's actually 11th is his 5th best result all year, which is absolutely nuts. Despite like the day he had, like Newgarden was like, every race, there just seems to be some sort of absolute categorical mistake. And again, Penske, a catalogue of mistakes this weekend. And I mean, where do you even start off? McLaughlin was unfortunate that Power was punting him up. It was on the completely wrong strategy anyway. Power just made a stupid move, which just cost him massively a championship hunt. And then Newgarden has just had another absolute mess of a weekend.
I mean, it feels like we've said, where do we start? A hell of a lot with Team Penske this year. Yeah, it's kind of been that sort of year. They've been far better than last year. We spoke about this a lot, especially in the early rounds. Last year they had such troubles on road and street courses, but their performance has been there this year. Just so many things have seemed to go wrong. I guess the highlight is obviously the collision between teammates, and yeah, it was obviously McLaughlin who instigated the Laguna Seca contact, but that in the end was more consequential for him anyway, rather than Power, who kind of continued on to a decent result. But this one was, I mean, not a move fitting of a 43-year-old veteran. Let's just put it that way. I mean, you're both in the championship fight. Alex Palou is behind you at this point, the points leader. You are both going to gain from the points leader. And even if it wasn't a championship rival in front of Power, it's just the move wasn't on. He was too far back. He overcommitted. I think he must have locked the rears completely, kind of lost control with that twitch. And to do that on a teammate, especially, I mean, yeah, it's made it an uphill fight for both in the championship. Some huge implications from a championship standpoint this weekend, and it's all played into Palou's favour. I did also love McLaughlin kind of standing by the side of the track. I loved equally as much the AMR safety crew allowing him to do that. I think his interview, once he calmed down a bit, was very mature afterwards. Because at the end of the day, I think him and Power get on quite well. They're pretty good friends, or at least get on well as teammates. So yeah, it's huge consequences. And Newgarden, I mean, what can you say? What can you say?
I just find it funny. It's his like 5th best result all year.
So many things.
Sixth best result. But even so, it's in his top half of results this year.
Exactly.
How?
He was running well. He'd made really good progress. They'd had a couple of tough, sort of, especially road course qualifying sessions, but they were kind of back in the ballpark. It looked like, as much as Iowa didn't go well qualifying wise, and it also didn't go well comparative to recent years, obviously, for Newgarden. It felt like a really good weekend, I think, for him anyway, just the way he raced forward. It felt like he kind of just had used it to at least get back on the horse, even if not in the championship fight. And yeah, obviously he was first of all cost by a slow pit stop when he looked bound for a podium, really, but it just seems something's gone wrong. I mean, just look back to Mid-Ohio when he had the multiple speeding penalties because of some glitch somewhere. Yes, it's ridiculous, really. You look at how it started at St. Pete, how it could have gone at Long Beach, and he could have been a cutaway leader after 2 rounds in the championship, but it's kind of just been this catch-up with things going catastrophically wrong. I mean, another stat for you that I saw from Eric Smith on Twitter, on X, as we're supposed to call it, was that McLaughlin, his best street course finish this year. Any guesses?
I can only say like 10th, but I feel like that's too.
Yeah, St. Petersburg and Long Beach were like 26, both 26. Detroit must have been low down because he crashed. We had another one.
Toronto.
So
that was his best finish. Toronto was his best finish. We had, I think, 12 cars on the lead lap at the end. And McLaughlin ended up still finishing 16th. He's finished in the 20s for the rest of the street course races, which is ultimately, St. Pete, not really his doing, the whole push to pass thing, if we're to kind of believe what's been said there, not going back into that. Long Beach, a car failure, not his fault. Detroit, his error. He admitted that. This certainly not his fault. I think he was doing really well to still be running fourth at that point, actually, to be fair, because he, as you mentioned earlier, Dan, he started on a used set of alternates, which, let's just put this into perspective. Kyle Kirkwood said in the post-race press conference, it's wild to me that they did that. Scott Dixon said he didn't think anyone on this planet would do that. So McLaughlin, while he made headway to get to third at the start, was kind of just managing just kind of dropping like a stone and was just on the back foot from there. I mean, he got lucky, I think, with cautions, red flag, but had to do like 35 laps on a pair of sticker alternates later in the race.
He did 18 on his first stint. So that's what I said earlier. I thought if he carried on, he was going to get absolutely chewed up. He's probably lucky that he wasn't because he got crashed out. He's probably fortunate the red flag saved him a few laps.
Yeah, disastrous. I mean, just to put into perspective what these kind of issues for Penske due to the championship, Power's 49 points back. He's still second, but he's there or thereabouts. But it was nonetheless stupid. He got a drive-through penalty. He would have still finished fifth and made gains on Palou. So, yep. McLaughlin's now 83 points back. Never say never, but we're suddenly at a stage where we've got, 5 races left? Newgarden's 145. He's way out.
I mean, it's championship picture is, you still got 4 ovals in 5 races, and we still know Palou's weakness is short ovals. I still say boxy Palou, I think, by some margin. I think you've got Power and Dixon. You've got an outside chance, and just because of where Herta is points-wise, and he's probably stronger than Palou at short ovals, I don't think you can say he's an impossibility. I think O'Ward and McLaughlin, now you're looking at miracles, really. They've got to win at least 2 or 3, really. So, yeah, Power and Dixon, I think, are just about in there. I think Power and Dixon are certainly in the mix. I think Herta, O'Ward and McLaughlin need a miracle.
Yeah, while we're touching on these guys, we may as well mention what happened in Dixon and Palou's races, do you think?
Yeah.
Dixon...
Not much.
I mean...
Kept their cars clean.
Yeah, we had a hilarious tweet from Chip Ganassi, basically announcing to the world that, this. I'll get onto more of this in the funny moment at the end of the episode, but yeah, we had a hilarious tweet from him, basically announcing that this was our worst ever qualifying as a team. I think their best car started... certainly outside the Fast 12, because all 5 of their cars missed out, while all 5 of the Andretti-ish cars made it through. It was just great recoveries from Dixon, from Palou, and from Armstrong as well, who I think was the best qualifying car in 13, possibly. He finished 5th, Palou 4th, Dixon in 3rd. Dixon just found his way to 3rd pretty seamlessly. It was quite impressive. He did kind of a double overcut. Both of his stops were kind of overcuts, and his pace was just, he was setting fastest laps late in stints. It was pretty awesome from Dixon, I must say. Of some drive. He looked like the only guy who could really challenge the Andretti cars. Palou, even Dixon said, I think Dixon getting forward wasn't particularly fortunate. Palou probably would have finished back end of the top 10. He was kind of playing a percentage game, I think, for quite a lot of the race. I think he was kind of being chewed up a couple of times by guys more aggressive, not in that championship picture, but ultimately that kind of paid dividends because he escapes all of the issues. He just avoided O'Ward's car, which was incredibly heads up. But yeah, it was, the reason that Palou was down the order was, he would have easily been in the Fast 12, but got penalised for this impeding on O'Ward, which I think ultimately he impeded O'Ward, but he couldn't have gone anywhere, really. There was a car in front, there was a car to the side.
I think part of the issue is he's behind Simpson and then overtakes him, but then sort of doesn't overtake him. It's like he doesn't know O'Ward's on the fast lap. The problem is of those, it's by letter of the law, he has impeded someone. He has stopped O'Ward from doing a fast qualifying run, but then you also got the human side to it. So it's, what game do you play? And you've got to be consistent with it, which is the hard thing, because there's going to be 50-50s like that. And he has significantly impeded O'Ward, which has stopped him from advancing, which means, therefore, Palou should be penalised in some way. But
my view on this is pretty much that you had drivers all session being scuppered by traffic. You know, we had multiple angry tweets from drivers as well as O'Ward. VK had an angry tweet go out, and so many were scuppered by traffic, but just kind of bailed earlier on their laps through the session. You could get to a stage where you're penalising everyone. There's not an ideal solution on a street course. It's tight, traffic's inevitable, and ultimately it's down to the drivers to manage that, I guess. I think Pelot also said that O'Ward had caught a yellow on that lap, so it wasn't going to improve anyway, which was another thing that maybe could have been weighed up. But ultimately, Pelot probably made the most of the weekend anyway. Maybe he could have gotten... No, he wasn't a match for the Andrettis. So I think he, regardless of what happened in qualifying, he kind of made the most of it. And this is the sort of day that is the reason why he wins championships and why he is probably going to win the championship this year.
In bar to Troy Naira, he's finished top 5 in every race. So it's a good record. It's a good record. And as you said, he's in the box seat. Gateway is probably his worst track on the entire schedule. So let's maybe wait for that. But yeah. Power and Dixon, I think, have got a chance, but they need to win because Pelot is really strong at Portland. So, you know, where he loses a Gateway, he'll probably win that back in Portland. So, you know, it's hard to say, but he's definitely the box seat. You know, he's pretty much got a race win. Well, he's got an entire race in his pocket. So we'll see. We'll see. Taya Pourchaire. We got chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I think, to do in this episode. We did a whole episode about him last time, and I think probably, as I mentioned at the start, deserves his own. I mean, we'll start off midweek where a French publication, I won't say a name, but a French publication released an article on Pourchaire, an interview with Pourchaire. There were some interesting claims in there. He said he signed a 3-year contract with McLaughlin. It's all in French, was behind a paywall, so you couldn't really read too much into it. But there were also comments about that Aaron McLaren needed funding, was one off the top of my head. And just the interview that he was unhappy that he got sacked by McLaren, which is, you know, somewhat fair. Then he posts a statement midweek, which I'm just getting up now, saying, I've read the article, it's grossly inaccurate, and he says he was surprised that he was taken out by McLaren, but they respected areas of the contract, they're supportive of me, blah, 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 which is retweeted by McLaren. And Tony Kanaan. So Tony Kanaan has, for some reason, decided to take all this situation on himself, argue with everyone on Twitter about it, and completely blow his own reputation. I find this really funny. We'll probably go to funny moments. But basically, after Pourchaire's statement, Kanaan retweets and said, Teddy, I'll repeat out loud what we spoke on the phone today, but we will keep between us and put a plan to action soon. This tweet ages in the most funny fashion after Rossi crashes and breaks his hand on Friday. And then Pourchaire's called up. It's like Kanaan's plan all along was to stop Rossi's car from turning and he could get Pourchaire in and clear up the whole situation. It's obviously not like that at all, but that tweet is rather funny looking into context. But yeah, it felt like a bit of an odd call-up, no? Like he was in France, he was relaxing, and there's a massive rush to get him to Toronto. The word I would use to describe it is reactionary to the events of the week. If it was like, you'd think there'd be more convenient options that McLaren could have taken. And like, you're going to pick between him and Ilott. Surely you'd pick Ilott if you're going to rush somebody over, because at least he's raced at Toronto before, no?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to dig into, isn't there? So yeah, Rossi's crash was, I mean, a lot of drivers were having issues at turn 8. There was, I think basically it went from a new surface to an old surface, and drivers basically just had too much braking confidence, and the window of getting it right, getting it wrong was pretty narrow. We saw Kevin Simpson in the race make his first error in a race, really, to crash there. We saw Lundqvist in practice. We saw McElrain in qualifying, all kind of the same crash. But Rossi tried to stay in it. He clipped the tyre barrier with his kind of left front, and steering wheel just snaps out of his hand. It breaks his thumb. Super unfortunate. I mean, yeah, what more can you say? Super unfortunate. I think there's positivity. He'll be back in time for Gateway. He was immediately back in Indianapolis to kind of start his recovery. And Indianapolis was where Teo Pourchaire was 3 days before going on holiday to the French
was he there?
Riviera.
Was he signing a contract with someone?
I believe he lives there, or he was supposed to live
It's like,
there.
I'm not living. We're doing a lease on his house.
Yeah, he was supposed to live there. So 3 days before, Tony Kanaan calls Teo Pourchaire at midnight, midnight local time. He'd gone back to France, but he said, I watch every IndyCar session, and I was watching, and I was at a restaurant, and I jokingly said to my girlfriend, maybe I'll get a call from Tony in a few hours. Lo and behold, this happens. So Teo, as he's preparing to go to bed for another relaxing day of his holiday back in France, enjoying the French summer, suddenly has to think, how am I going to get to Toronto in 15 to 18 hours to make practice, which he didn't, or make qualifying, which he did, on a track that he didn't know a thing about. So he was sent sort of onboard stuff, data that he basically analysed before he got on a flight at 5 a.m. in the morning.
What happens if he went to bed? A completely different story.
Yeah, probably be talking about, one of the drivers that were on the ground, the more convenient options. We've heard mentions of Oliver Askew. I wrote a piece in anticipation for it being Oliver Askew. That went to pot when Pourchaire was announced. Yeah, it was pretty wild. He had to fly from Nice to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt to Toronto, where he got on a train to get to a car that would take him to the track. Overnight, you had McLaren personnel driving his just racing essentials, basically up from Indy to Toronto. Then, it's a rush. He arrives, I think, 45 minutes to an hour before qualifying. He basically said afterwards, all I want is some air conditioning and some sleep. But to be fair, he had the same smile that we've seen, no matter the roughness of the last month or so of being released. I just think the whole situation is wild. From the interview where he made these claims, then walking these claims back. How did that happen? It seems like it's some serious breach of sort of journalistic integrity. If it is, they've wrongly portrayed him as he suggests. He's now emphasized there's no financial issues, none of this is happening. Ultimately, maybe it was a case of, Zach Brown said on the Peacock broadcast, he was just the best option. But maybe it was a case of, this wasn't the plan, but it's a plan from TK. So, we'll give him this chance. Maybe we can allow him to showcase himself to other teams, because one thing that Teo said, that Aaron McLaren have tried to help him to get another IndyCar seat or get back into racing somewhere. It was just ridiculous timing after the events of the week, all of that stuff, to then go to Pourchaire of anyone. I just think
it's so reactionary after. I feel like it was McLaren trying to say, we still do care about Pourchaire. Look at us dragging him to Toronto.
I
feel like they could have picked someone like Askew, who was a lot easier, or
100%. They made life very tough for themselves getting. What if Pourchaire? You essentially probably had to have a standby to possibly deputise for the deputy, because of the time was such a narrow window. What if he missed a connection? What if he missed a connection? And then that's the other thing, to throw a driver into qualifying. No matter if he's driven a car or one of their cars recently, he's not driven the hybrid on a road or street course. He's got a different steering wheel. He's having to drive with Rossi's steering wheel. Just throw a driver in to have practice. Like that 45 minutes of practice on Saturday is valuable. So instead, Pourchaire's kind of ambling around doing cycle laps and qualifying, puts himself ahead of Rob, which was impressive in itself.
What does that say about Rob Pourchaire?
Maybe. But then the race, he was running all right. He was competitive. Again, just to be competitive was a win. Expectations were always going to be low. And I don't think he did himself any harm. He had a bit of strife where him and Linus Lundqvist were dueling. He ended up with a puncture, but that put him a lap down. But he still finished 14th after starting 26th. Was it worth the hassle? Maybe it was in the end. You've got that, at least some entrant points don't matter to that car, to be honest. Anyway, really, they're in the leader's circle. Just a crazy story.
At some point, some kind of statement by putting Pourchaire.
A crazy story.
saying, "Oh, we all still do get along really." Like none of this ever happened. We're all good friends.
I mean, it's like you couldn't even put it in or write it for a soap opera. Like the timing after this interview, he condemns it and says, that it's grossly inaccurate.
But like at the time, Pourchaire was clearly upset from what we were suggested.
Yeah, and he met the media after qualifying and still said he was disappointed, but at the same time he said it feels like family at Aaron McLaren, and the relationships can't be burnt because he wouldn't have agreed to do this. I mean, he said he loves racing, he loves IndyCar racing, he'd love to, if they need him for Gateway, he'll step in willingly. And I love that about him. He'll just do anything. He just wants to be in a car. He loves racing, and I love that about him. I mean, there's too much. We've probably missed some nitty gritty.
I still wish you sort of saw Askew because I sort of miss him. But...
Yeah, no, it would have been a good opportunity.
But it doesn't make quite as good of a story, does it?
No, it doesn't. And talking of story, check out the DIVEBOMB site because I have done it's probably beyond the deep dive into just kind of how we got to this situation and then kind of just the details of this latest chapter. So yeah, feel free to check that out on the site.
This season deserves a whole section on Pourchaire. Right?
Yes.
It's just so funny. It's hilarious. I think Canon's tweet about the plan is just so funny to me. How weirdly it ages of Rossi crashes 2 days later and Pourchaire's in the car. So
incredible.
We'll run over the running order. Everyone's pretty much had a crash, so it's all right. Herta, Kirkwood, Dixon, Palou, Armstrong got a pretty good result against one of those. You avoid chaos and have a good day. Same as Maluka somewhat. I think it's pretty well. It's a great result for Maluka. Continues his great form since he's come back. So very happy for little Dave. Is that his best ever on a road and street? It might be.
Probably up there.
I think he got 6th mid-Ohio.
Yeah.
Whilst I have a look.
Yes. Well, I was just going to mention the next driver in the order, Rinus VK. He finally avoided bad luck because it's been like a running joke how much poor luck he's had. And that's now 3 successive top 10 finishes. And he was actually out-qualified by his teammate, Christian Rasmussen. So unfortunate that he crashed. I think he's finished last in maybe even the last 3 or at least 3 of the recent...
the last 3 street courses.
Street course races. It was just unfortunate. It wasn't his fault. He just got put in the wall. But he had 2 races left. Essentially, that was 1 race left because he didn't get to run that race. I just don't know the situation he's in because he qualified really well. He's now made 2 consecutive Fast 12 appearances. And I feel like he is stepping up pace-wise late in the season. It doesn't feel uncommon that he beats VK on 1-lap pace, but we don't know what was going to happen in the race. Mid-Ohio was superb in the race, so we can say, yeah, maybe that would have happened again, but there was so much attrition. I feel for him in many ways because I feel like we are starting to see real pace from him. Don't know where it leaves him.
The results aren't really interesting for the result we had. It's rather bizarre. For the actual race we had, the results are actually fairly normal. It's rather weird. Anyway, Lundgaard had the polar opposite to the race last year. It was pretty anonymous all day from what I remember. I think it was Lundgaard Newgarden got into trouble with.
Maybe.
Anyway,
I don't remember.
And he was at a VK Grosjean, who qualified really well, actually, qualified 5th. And Rahal completed the top 10. And then there was Newgarden Power, Lundqvist, who got into trouble everywhere, it felt like at some point on the weekend. And then there was Pourchaire Sauri, who, that's one of those Roy Cash can have quite a good result. He was the last car running. He was obviously back for coin this week. So I think he's dragged the 51 to its 2 best results. So,
and he actually got to qualify this time and put a few cars behind him as well. So you can't really ask for much more.
He'll be back from Portland as well. If you missed the news, we don't know who's going to be into the ovals, but we think it's Catherine Legg. Then there's McLaughlin, O'Ward, Ericsson, Fittipaldi, Ferrucci, Siegel touched on their instance. Given Simpson, as Archie touched on, had his own incident. Rosen has a mechanical issue. Hunter McElroy is making his IndyCar debut. He hit the wall, didn't he, somewhere? Yeah, no, he had contact. Yeah. He hit the wall, which forced him to come in with some sort of broken wheel.
He had a suspension failure. So he said he got up in a grey, basically clipped the wall, but then a few laps later had a suspension issue. So that was a shame.
Then we had Rob, we had a mechanical issue. Do we know what the issue was?
No, not sure.
No, he had an issue. Kind of Pino, who made contact with Dixon. It was the first time I actually ever made the fast 12, and then got into a bit of an unfortunate collision with Dixon.
Again, it's kind of race execution. You just
he's
there in the position, but
he's behind Rob in the standings. He's on the same points as Rasmussen, and he's done a race less. So
yeah. I mean, he obviously turned in too early, and that was the that he made, really. And
then obviously Rasmussen finished bottom of the pack.
Before we finish on the drivers as well, it feels a bit weird to go back to speaking about Iowa at this point, but we also spoke to Graham Rahal and Santino Ferrucci on Friday. I just think this is quite an interesting sort of 4 minutes or so, just because Rahal spoke about his, misfortune and lack of it in Iowa eventually in the second race after more misfortune in the first race. And then Ferrucci also about kind of what makes him so good on short ovals, which I found fascinating, and just more about his fireworks during the Iowa race. Thanks, Dave. Graham, in the media call ahead of Iowa, you kind of spoke a little bit about having a feeling that some of your results were a bit unrepresentative, and how much of a boost was it, I guess, to show that performance that you did at Iowa, whether in qualifying and then obviously with the result after the misfortune of the first race?
Yeah, I was going to say the first race was exactly what I said, though, which was we qualify decent, but we get a grid penalty, for 9 spots, which at Iowa was a very negative effect. And then, of course, we had the wheel explode, which I've never, ever had. So Sunday for me was just finally a normal race. Like, it was just not, there was no real highs, no real lows. And so it was nice to just have that sort of result, because it's kind of where I feel like we should have had results like that a lot this season. And as I said on that media call, I thought we'd been fairly bitten by the luck bug, and we made some bad calls. Obviously, I had the error at Indianapolis getting the pit speed limit penalty, which probably took us from top 5, certainly top 6 to finishing 15th. And so we haven't maximized every aspect of it, but it was nice just to have a fairly normal weekend. Of course, being in Hy-Vee's backyard with everything that they did, it was nice to get the team up, sort of towards the pointy end of the grid there. So, and my car was great. I wish we could have qualified even better, if I'm honest, because I don't know if I made a change all weekend necessarily. It's just in qualifying we had a little bit too much understeer, missed the balance a hair in it, and it cost me. But it was great to be racing at the sharp end again.
And Santino, you probably gave us more fireworks, I think, than anyone last weekend. Just how did you really make that high line work? Did it take quite a bit of courage to kind of get that working?
As all of us want to do that high line practice, and I think that's super important, not just for rubbering in the track, but just getting confidence in your car to go up top. I tend to run a looser car on the ovals, and it benefits more on the top line. So I feel like every time, if anyone ever went up there, they just kind of understeer and push off. Versus for me, I was able to have room on the tools and enough front wing to just kind of go up there and hang it around the fence. But
Courage is his middle name, if you don't know Santino.
I feel like I got a really good feeling around the short oval outside lane, and I'm comfortable sliding the car at those speeds. Obviously it'll bite you when it bites you, and it's the scary part about going up there. Also, you have to know who you're racing. Like VK, for example, trying to fight for the top 5. I lifted out of it because I watched him get a wiggle, and that I kept pushing the air off of his floor. He probably would have just lost it and hit me and took us both out in the wall. So,
you know what the positive is, though?
What?
It's a lot less distance to crash when you're on the top. It hurts a lot less.
That's good to know.
That's I've tested it.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. I feel like it's cool to also. I've never come from like a lap back in race 1 and finished as well as I've done. So, and that's honestly a big thing of the team, the crew, good stops, good balance adjustments. Because that first stint in race 1, I don't know if anyone, we don't have onboard, but I think I crashed 3 or 4 times in that stint and somehow just was praying to pit and got lucky with the yellows. Pulled 3 turns of front wing out of it. So, but no, it was fun. I hope that Iowa either repaves the rest of the track Or like Graham said earlier today, we run more highline practice because that is one of the best tracks that we have on the calendar. And we made it one of the most, unfortunately, boring races I feel like we've had all year, and that track deserves a lot more than that. High V deserves a lot more than that. All the fans that come out to bake in the 100-degree sun deserve more than that.
Unsung hero of the weekend. It's not many to choose from this week because it feels like everybody crashed out. I always go to really. One of you go first.
Given we didn't really touch on him, I'm going for Grosjean because finished 8th. Pretty good. Got into the Fast 12 again, dragging that car to some real decent results.
You could even, just say Pourchaire, just because he outqualified his teammate after that whole weekend. Just not even the whole weekend, the whole week. So
after all that, none of you took mine, so actually if I was going to go in the lead. So, funny moments, there's plenty. I think Kanon's tweet, just the way it aged, I just found hilarious. We've got to find Chip Ganassi's tweet.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I've got it written down here if you want me to read it out. So you mentioned Kanon's tweet. I've been waiting for the Chip Ganassi tweet mention all weekend. I just found it hilarious the way you can imagine the kind of intonation of it. I just found it hilarious the way he basically just announced to the world, "Yeah, that was our worst qualifying effort. Get in there." It was basically. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our worst qualifying effort ever. But this team never gives up. We can win from there. They didn't quite win from there, but they certainly made progress from there with a 3rd, 4th, 5th for their drivers.
Such a funny tweet. He's just so confident in such a bad qualifying result. It was an absolute disaster in qualifying, but I'm so confident in this team despite how bad we were today.
Do you reckon sat down and either approved it or just sat down and be like, how do we write this? Or do you reckon
Chip on Twitter, I think it's more spur of the moment. It was just the way he put it, that, ladies and gentlemen, it's like he's going to be like, we did it, let's go, we did it, we got our worst qualifying ever. It's like it was an achievement.
McLaughlin, and I think my winner, and the one that, I don't know if you probably have seen it, but Aaron McLaren did a tweet instigated by David Malukas. If you've never seen the Spider-Man meme, then pointing at each other, you'll need to see that meme for context. But they've got a cardboard cutout of Callum Milot, and then they got Malukas, Pourchaire, and Siegel to basically all point at each other. This cardboard cutout of Callum Milot, obviously all referring to the drivers of the 6 car at some point this year, and it's the most hilarious thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's been a pretty embarrassing saga of McLaren, but they took it on board fantastically and created a rather funny image, and that takes the cake for me this week. McLaughlin's 2nd, and Ganassi 3rd. There's a lot.
That was brilliant. That falls. Where does that fall?
I've got to win it. The only thing that could have made it better is if they somehow managed to drag Palou into the
yeah.
picture.
I just love Chip's tweet too much. That's taking the crown for me. And then it's the Aaron McLaren thing, and then McLaughlin / the irony of Kanan's the plan when we ended it with some plan.
Yeah, I thought McLaughlin's the person 22C after the plane lands is brilliant. There's so many. So all 4 of them could win on any week, and it's this week they've all decided to come at the same week. So sorry guys, but it's only 1 winner this week. Well, it's 2 if you count. I don't know. There's no consensus this week because there's 2 really funny moments to choose from. So right, we'll get back to the predictor results for you next. So we'll start off with the podium predictor tournament. So the fan vote, you went Palou, Herta, Award, so that got you 2. Ellie, you went for McLaughlin, Power, Palou, that got you none. Sorry. Also getting none was Josh Mason. You predicted Palou, Lingard, Award. 2 points went to Archie. You predicted McLaughlin, Herta, Palou. 3 points went to Formula Model Shop. You predicted Palou, Award, Dixon. 4 points went to the IndyCar writers who predicted McLaughlin, Herta, Kirkwood. And 6 points went to me and Tom Gamemore. We both predicted Herta and Dixon 1st and 3rd, respectively. So looking at the standings, Dive and followers, you've got some catching up to do. You're on 10. Ellie's on 19. Formula Model Shop on 22. Just behind Josh Mason, 23. And that's myself on 29, just behind Archie and 30, with the IndyCar writers on 32. And leading the way is Tom Gamemore on 34 for the first time
in Iowa week. My Iowa week has served me so well.
Oh, it has. It's tight. I think any of the top, it's like IndyCar, any of the top 4 can still win the title. Maybe.
I need to catch up. I really need to catch. I need to have a good.
You need to have a gateway. And the Milwaukee throws in quite the spoon because you can change your fortunes quite late on. Let's have a look at the fastest predicted tournament next week. You will actually have the up-to-date standings because we've got no idea. So somewhere next week, once we're all back, once I'm back, you'll have the results. So fastest of this week was Herta, Kirkwood, Rosenqvist, McLaughlin, Grosjean, Rahal. I've had a bit of a stinker. I think I only got Herta right, so there's one for me. Archie, you got McLaughlin, Kirkwood, and Herta, so you actually ended up with 3 there, so that's not bad. And then Ellie, you got McLaughlin, Rosenqvist, and Herta, so you actually ended up with 3 too, so that's not too bad. Bit of a disaster for me, but for quite a niche fast 6, I think you did pretty well getting 3. So well done.
Yeah.
Not bad.
I thought you
Pretty happy.
Now we've got a 4-week break.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
What are we going to do? We'll find something. Hopefully we'll have a nice 4 weeks ahead. Hopefully we'll have some good content. There'll be something. You'll
Stay
see.
tuned.
Stay tuned. I mean, there's nothing planned currently, but stay tuned, viewers. You'll have hopefully a good 4 weeks ahead. And then, it's 4 weeks, and we have quite a rush to the championship because we'll have Gateway, obviously. Then it's the week after that is Portland. Week after that is the Milwaukee doubleheader. Then we have a nice week to sort of preview the championship if the battle is still on, and then Nashville, and then we're done. 6 months. Season's flown by. It's a bit of a shame.
It's gone way too fast.
Yeah, we're 2/3 done now. Over.
the show more rest.
Over 2/3 done. So, yeah, we don't know what's on the cards next week. Hopefully something good. I mean, hopefully we get some drivers on for the next few weeks. But we'll try our best. But stay tuned. We forgot something. The funny moments. It's a bit late now. Viewers can find out. We had 2 journalists go to Toronto this weekend. They took 0.5s of every single driver. So that was quite funny.
Let's just look at our socials, Instagram, TikTok.
And they also got some specialised messages from some drivers towards me and Archie, so I'll play them in now. For the people who got to the episode, you can have some personalised messages from Scott McLaughlin and Pato Ward towards me and Archie. So little Easter egg.
What's up, Archie? Hope you're well, man. Thanks for all of the coverage, and I appreciate the support.
Say hi to my friend Dan.
Hi, Dan.
I don't know if people skip the outro, so maybe it's worth staying for once.
I must say, thanks to Maddie and Sean as well. They did a very good job and a very fun job over the weekend. I enjoyed it a lot. Seeing
I think there's a reel coming out in the next few days, so have a look for that. All the 0.5. I started the episode. I was doing the funny moments, anyway. I'm home next week, so our fastest predicted tournament update. That can be like the highlight of the episode. That's maybe the title episode. Fastest predicted tournament update episode 66.
I may be home. I may be home next week.
You may be home.
Depends when we decide to record.
All right. But thanks all very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening. As I said, I hope you enjoyed Toronto's with a crazy one. But we'll see you next time.